Okay, we'll give it 1 minute more and then I think we'll start and people can join as we go on. Okay, 7:05. Good evening, and thank you so much for making the time to be with us on this cold evening. We appreciate it, and it will definitely be worth your while. This evening session, we're going to focus on educating ourselves about understanding investments, but I think Anthea will also help us understand this complex financial world and, who's who in the zoo, as she says, and also what options and possibilities there are for us, as well as, what we can do to start thinking and planning for financial freedom. So my name is Shireen Mutara, and I run a consultancy and also a coaching practice where I work with women. And this webinar is part of a series of responses to what I hear from my clients and those in my networks. I find that a lot of women are struggling to plan for the long term financially. And I'd really wanted to create an opportunity to have some conversation and education about that. And I know Anthea in a different life, and from our conversations, I know that she could definitely help us. I also read Anthea's book in January, and that also made me want to link back with her again about this conversation, because the book was really useful for me, quite educational, and I've used a lot of what you've said in the book to help me in terms of my own financial planning. So I have asked you to please share your name and so on in the chat. And also, as Anthea proceeds, please feel free to share questions and we'll catch up with those when she's done with the presentation. Just a little bit of technology etiquette, how the technology gets us sometimes. I'll ask you to please mute your mics, but if you can put your video on, we'd love that. We would love to see some of your faces so that we don't only see a black screen. If you can, that would be great. And then just to let you know also that I am recording the session, and that's primarily for us to be able to share it forward for those who may not be able to make the session. So let me start by introducing Anthea briefly, and she will tell you a lot more detail about what she does. Just a sec. Okay. Anthea Gardner is the founder and MD at the South African asset management business Cartesian Capital. She has worked for global banks such as HSBC, Rand Merchant Bank in South Africa, Morgan Stanley in London, and the African Development Bank. Anthea is also a market commentator on CNBC Africa, Classic FM, MoneyWeb, and SAFM. She's the author of the bestseller Make Your Money Work for You, which I just made reference to earlier. A very warm welcome, Anthea, and thanks so much for making the time to be with us this evening. I deeply appreciate it, and I look forward to learning more from you as well. Over to you.
Good evening, Shireen, and everybody. Thank you from my side as well for allowing me the opportunity to impart hopefully some knowledge, and I hope you'll find it interesting. There's quite a bit to get through, so if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to go ahead and start. And if you'll give me a second, I will in fact make sure that I can see you, but you know how this is. There we go. I have to arrange all my different screens so that I can see everybody. Yeah, so Shireen, spot on. That's me. I've worked around the world in some of the biggest local and global investment banks, as well as a stint at the development bank, African Development Bank in Tunis, which not only means I've lived and worked in the most southern and northern capitals on the African continent, but in fact, I was a fruit seller, self-immolated in protest, which was pretty much considered the catalyst for the revolution that later became known as the Arab Spring. On top of my day job, which includes analyzing stock markets and companies, deciding which shares or bonds to buy and sell, you can often find me in the media, mostly on Wednesdays, CNBC Africa at 5 o'clock, or Thursdays at 5:30 with Michael Avery on Classic FM. I have a fairly large footprint, internet footprint, so a simple Google will help you with that. And then I'm a triathlete, which means I swim, bike, run almost every day of my life. And one of my proudest moments is in fact finishing the Ironman in Sweden. And for those of you who don't know, that means I swam 4 kilometers, cycled 180 kilometers, and then ran 42 kilometers, all well before the 17-hour cutoff. And to do that, at the peak of my training, I was training.
Anthea, sorry, we keep losing you.
Oh, because it looks like my internet's fine. Which part are you losing the sound?
Yeah, it keeps cutting out a bit, but continue hearing most of it. So let's see how it goes.
Let me switch off some of my other devices because there's a lot. There really is a lot running in this little house of mine. So I'm just going to put everything off that might want to use the internet. How's that? And then let me know if you still have problems. Right, so that was me. I also started a business called Cartesian Capital, which is named after the French philosopher and mathematician René Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am," and whose mathematical legacy is the geometry behind the Cartesian plane, you know, the XY axis. And also, if you ever put numbers into your Garmin, or if you put a place into your Waze or your Google Maps to get somewhere, those numbers that come up are in fact called Cartesian coordinates, and you can see the 26 degrees 02 spot 658 south and the 28 degrees 01.534 east. If you put those coordinates into your GPS, you'll end up in my office. So the two questions I often get asked is, how is it possible that I have more than 24 hours in my day? And if I'm such a busy person, why take the time to write a book? I mean, seriously. So when I came back to South Africa 7 years ago, I realized that we have a very big problem in this country, and I'm not even talking about corrupt politicians now. We currently have one of the lowest saving rates in the world. Gross savings is less than 15% of GDP. That's money that you and I have saved and invested for emergencies, our pension fund, basically money we can call on when we need it. And invariably, we end up needing it at some stage. This less than 15% is much lower than the world average of 25.1% and looks ridiculous compared to other countries such as China, where their savings rate is 45%. Something needs to change if we are going to build a better future for ourselves, for our children. And then the other reason I wrote this book is I've pretty much been doing this for a decent amount of time. We're talking decades now. And my sister, she's a little bit younger than me. She's known me all her life. She's younger than me, so she's known me all her life. And a couple of years ago, she called me up one day doing this market commentary, and she said, "Oh, so that's what you do for a living?" It's like, it's not like we've never spoken about it. Let's face it. I think the problem is this world of investing is so foreign to most people. And I wrote the book because I want to give people some insight into this world and to make them feel
sorry, Anthea, apologies. Somebody, please make sure that you are muted so that we minimize the background noise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And so I wrote the book, The Second Reason, because I want people to get an insight and feel more comfortable with saving and investing. And also, it's funny that when I tell people I'm an asset manager, their eyes glaze over and they nod, which basically means they have no idea what I've just said. And there's actually another problem with the situation. Even when they do know what an asset manager does, they look at me as if I don't know what an asset manager is. And you know why that is, or my conclusion of why that is because there are so few women in my industry, let alone women of color, that actually the people who are asking me and kind of look at me askew, when I say I'm an asset manager, they don't, or I take stock in a company and therefore keep a register of assets of the company. They're so wrong. So I included in my book a chapter called Who's Who in the Zoo. Admittedly, I must say, it's a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a little funny comparing my industry to a zoo and the people who work in it as animals, but in truth, it can feel a bit crazy at times. And basically, these are the categories of animals, people who dominate my industry. So you've got the tortoises who are like the banks, you know, they're slow, they're not innovative, they grow to be big, old, boring, they just get on with it. They stick around forever. The big cats are the traders. They're hunters. They're just in front of their trading screens all day long, looking for buying and selling shares and bonds. The giraffes are the financial planners or the financial advisors. They eat from the highest branches in the jungle or in the environment generally, and I'll explain that in a minute. And then the pachyderms, which is a category, not very good myself because I fall into two categories.
You're still cutting out there. Okay, let's try again.
Because I see, I can now see that I'm on kind of full. Let's see what I can do. I'm like full Wi-Fi, so just shout if you can't, or do something if you can't hear me. So the pachyderms is where I fall under, and I fall into two categories: the elephants, which are the long-only managers, and the rhinos, which are the bond managers. Because I manage long-only money, which I'll explain in a minute, or fixed income bond money. Very much pension fund related. We also have the hippos, who are the hedge fund managers. We can go into that if you really want to, but really the most important people that you need to know are these three people. So the financial planners, the advisors, excuse me, these are the giraffes. They advise clients directly on their insurance and their investments, and they do this by doing financial risk analysis with each person. They then decide which funds clients should be invested in. Me, the asset manager, I manage those funds or the client's money, and all I do all day long is buy and sell shares into these funds or bonds on behalf of the clients. And then the traders and the stockbrokers, they do the actual day-to-day trading in the stock market. And there you are. In fact, most people think of trading floors as hundreds of men, and if you can spot a woman in that picture, you win a car. Making funny hand signals, and in fact, some of the stock exchanges still trade floors, still use this phrase, often referred to as the open outcry for obvious reasons. They're all shouting at each other, such as the Chicago Board of Trade, Commodities Exchange, the New York Mercantile. But quite frankly, these days, this is what a typical trader's desk looks like. Far too many screens showing prices of all assets, graphs of almost anything that moves, news, practically any information you need. asset management and trading really is about, or investment decisions, I should say, actually in total, really is about information. We are complete information junkies. We watch the news, we check our screens all day long. So for now, those are the most important people that you need to know. We can always get back to it a bit later. And the question is, why do we do this? So here's a few shocking stats for you. 96% of South Africans will retire without enough money. Do you want to be that 4%? According to the Financial Planning Institute, you need 17 times your final annual salary to retire comfortably. So if you're making gross salary of R1 million a year at the age of 65 or 60, whatever age you plan to retire at, you need 17 million rand saved up to retire comfortably. That number used to be 11 times, but thanks to medical research and generally, whether in South Africa we believe this or not, we are living in better conditions these days, and on average we are living longer. So that number has gone from 11 times your annual salary to 17 times your annual salary. And so the question is, so what? You know what I'm going to do? I'm actually just going to put this money in cash. Every month I'm going to put 100 rand away in the bank and leave it there, maybe earn a little bit of interest, maybe put it in the chest of drawers, whatever the case is. But here's the problem with cash. In 2012, this basket, 50 liters of petrol, 2.5 kilograms of maize meal, 24 cans of beer, 750 grams of instant coffee, 6 cans of Coca-Cola, and 125 grams of crisps cost 285 rand and 73 cents. Can you believe that? Today, that exact same basket, not even 9 years later, by the way, because I did that at the end of 2012, cost 1,307 rand and 98 cents. Now that's quite an arbitrary basket of groceries, and it's a bit of a spoil, to be honest. And if any of you, and I don't care where you shop, but if any of you have been shopping in the recent years, you would have noticed that meat prices have skyrocketed. And I haven't even included meat in this basket. So I'm going to play a video very quickly, and Shireen, I can see you on my screen, so if there's a problem, just put up your hand and I'll stop the video, okay? First, I don't want it to play there, I want it to play there.
How much? What could possibly go wrong?
Don't trust the unit trust.
No, I'm at the office.
And from over here. So, lower risk, bigger yawns.
Broker sounds poor.
It's a roller coaster ride.
With lank, bro. Isn't that illegal?
It's not illegal. I better get some sweet dividends from this. Well, I don't care. I'm buying it.
If it's expensive, it means it's good. Why a hedge fund? I mean, hedges are very difficult to maintain.
Shares. Who wants to share? Yes! Just borrow the money.
If I won the lottery, I'd invest it all and give half to charity. You know what I mean? Hello?
Do you want a Krugerrand? Chocolate. I actually feel sorry for the Irish.
Check what happened to Greece. Those are such a good investment. Good investment, those. What monthly fee?
Maybe I can help you with your financial slater.
Cars are not a good investment. Motorbikes are a good investment.
Winning. Like Charlie Sheen.
Who?
Charlie Sheen. Trust me, oil.
It's an internet company.
I invested in a case of wine.
Made a small fortune in wine.
And jet skis.
I just made money sitting here.
Classic.
Okay, so that was a bit funny, but now it's time for a teaching moment. And I'm not even going to go into all the nonsense they talk about, but believe it or not, I'm going to start from the beginning by teaching you the difference between simple and compound interest, which this is ridiculous when you think about that like just saying that is scary enough. And even more simplistically put, the difference between investing and spending. So normally, if I was in front of you, I would use Smarties to teach you the impact of compound interest. It's so much more fun, but you know, we're here on the webinar, times are. So we'll have to make do with the presentation. So maybe take some notes, buy some Smarties and show your friends this in future. So what this is going to do, and I've animated the Smartie game, I want to show you the difference in the impact between what we call simple interest and compound interest. We're going to start with the simple interest worksheet, as I call it. On the left-hand side is our investment account. On the right-hand side is our unnecessary spend. So let's say you invest 100 Rand, a red dot, a red Smartie preferably, but you know, for now, red dot. And you get paid 100% interest, so you earn another red dot. At the end of the investment period, you've got 200 Rand, right? Each dot is 100 Rand. Then let's say we take the interest we've earned, the 100 Rand, and we go out for a nice meal. In other words, we spend it. But we're not complete spenders, so we take the other 100 Rand and we invest it again, right? Still with me? And we earn interest on it again, same 100%, right? So we're now in the second period, we've invested 100, we've earned 100, we've spent 100, we've taken our first 100, we've invested it again, we've earned interest again, and let's see what happens. Then we take the 100 interest we've earned. Maybe this time we treat ourselves to a massage. We take the 100 Rand capital and we invest it again. And we earn interest again. And as I said, we're fairly disciplined at this. So we repeat this for 5 time periods. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 time periods at the end of, on the right-hand side of the page. So at the end of our 5 year, or so not 5 years, 5 periods, I'll call it, we would have 200 Rand in our investment account for nice meals or pairs of shoes or whatever, pairs of shoes for 100 Rand, must be joking, or whatever we decide to spend this money on. So we've taken the first 100 Rand and turned it into 600 Rand, some of which we spent through the years, but hey, look how clever we are, right? From 1 to 600. Now let me show you how stupid we were. I'm going to show you, this is compound interest. Let's start again. Same, we start with exactly the same amount. 1 red dot, which is 100 Rand. We invest it and we earn 100 Rand. Same procedure as last time, except this time, instead of spending the 100 Rand we've earned, we take the entire 200 Rand and we invest it. And because our interest is 100%, we earn another 200 Rand. Yeah, fairly simple stuff, right? I'm sure you're still all with me here. Then we take our 400 Rand, we invest it, and we earn another 400 Rand. And we repeat, same as last time. We're now in our final year, and look what has happened. I know this is difficult to see immediately, but the total number of red dots, or 100 Rands, is 32. Yeah, 3,200 Rand in your investment account, 0 in your spending account. So, hey, you've given up, you've sacrificed a nice meal out, you've sacrificed a massage, a pair of shoes, whatever it is we spend unnecessary luxuries on. So compare that to the simple interest calculations where you ended up with 200 Rand in your investment account and 400 Rand that you spent. You now have 3,200 Rand, which you invested and kept investing and basically compounded. It's time to teach you the rule of 72 because this is all very complicated. But before I teach you the rule of 72, have a look at this graph. This is a graph of the all-share index on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange for the last 30 years. Take note, the average annual return is 14% per annum. So if you had invested in 1995 when this graph started, oh, that's not 30 years. That's less than 30 years, actually. So the all-share, I've just realized that the all-share index only started in 1995. So in fact, it's only 26 years. So in 26 years, the total return was 1,267, on average 14% per annum. Now here's the rule of 72. The rule of 72 is double your money using compound earnings. 72 divided by the rate of the return equals the number of years it'll take you to double your money. And we just saw that if you had invested in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange in the last 26 years, that was the graph, it's 14%, right? So 72 divided by 14, because you're all mathematical geniuses, the answer is 5.14 years. So every 5 years, just a little bit over 5 years, you would have doubled your money. And if you've done it for 25 years, that's 5 times double your money. It works very well in reverse as well. So what rate do you need in order to double your money in 5 years? You need to be earning at least 72 divided by 5, which gives you 14.4%, right? Not complicated, but interesting to know. So I just want to show you something or bring something to your attention. This is only one of the many factors that impact the stock market. And even though I don't have a crystal ball and I can't see into the future, what I do is keep tabs on what is going on in the world and where we should be invested. So if you had invested in Apple shares when they listed, well, first of all, let's see what happened, right? So all of that, when I was a youngster, I had all of those. I had a Walkman, a video recorder, a camera, all that. That now fits into your phone. I mean, it's quite spectacular, really. So if you had invested in Apple shares when they listed in December 1980, you would have made an annual return of 19% per annum for the last 40 years. And now that you know the rule of 72, you can go work that out for yourself, right? I mean, okay, let me give you a clue. You would have doubled your money every 3.7 years for 40 years. Almost 4 years. You would have doubled your money every 4 years for 40 years. So let's just say that today you would be a dollar millionaire. Okay. Now, another one of my favorite companies, but bear with me here because I want to tell you a story, and I've already given away the punchline. So this is Jeff Bezos, who started Amazon, and probably you'll know him as he used to be one of the wealthiest men in the world. Now he's half wealthy because of his divorce. But he said about 2 years ago, he said, if you're a share owner in Amazon, you may want to take a seat because we're not thinking small. And he wasn't joking. Okay, so I've already given away the punchline, but just bear with me. I want to tell you a personal story. Do you remember Webvan? And I can't see you all, but I guarantee most of you are going, never heard of it in my entire life. So Webvan was an online grocery store founded in 1996, the heady days of the dot-com boom. Silicon Valley investors, those very smart private equity guys, Sequoia Capital, SoftBank, Goldman Sachs, even Yahoo invested close to $400 million in this online grocer. In November 1999, Webvan listed on the New York Stock Exchange and raised an additional $375 million by selling 8% of the company. That put the value of the company at $4.7 billion on the first day of listing on the exchange. The day the share listed, it started trading at $15, went up to 34. I mean, it was just ridiculous. The returns were phenomenal. It was eye-watering. So, ironically, at this stage of my life, I was working between London and San Francisco. And let it be known, I hate shopping. Like, I don't to be in a shopping mall. So, this is the windiest street in San Francisco. So initially when I was in San Fran, I used to live in Marin County, which was just over the Golden Gate Bridge, and I'd get a lift home or take a cab. So shopping was really an issue for me. Like, I just didn't want to go into the shops at lunchtime, buy my groceries, or after work. Like, you just can't get home easily. And then I moved into the city, and can you imagine like walking up and down the streets of San Francisco, like with these streets as windy and steep as they are? I mean, that's just not cool, right? So this is Lombard Street, the windiest. It's in fact the windiest road in the world. And the crooked part of Lombard Street was designed in 1922, arbitrary information, after it was decided that the 27% gradient of the hill was too steep for most vehicles, so they made it windy, so that people didn't have to like fall or roll down. They could actually walk or drive down. Trust me, you don't want to be carrying groceries up that street. So for me, Webvan was the perfect solution. I could order my groceries sitting at my desk during the day, and by the time I got home at night, they would deliver it for me. So for me, this was the ultimate business. Like, I was just like, when they listed, I was like, of course, this is going to be a successful business. It just absolutely makes sense to me. At the same time, I discovered a company called Amazon, which started, and most of you will remember this, or maybe you don't, but they started off by delivering books and putting them online. Now, I may hate shopping, but I love books. I mean, besides acquiring knowledge, I love the touch. I love the smell of a book. I love libraries. I love sitting in bookstores. I love drinking a coffee and browsing. And while I was in London, I spent hours at a bookstore called Waterstones, drinking coffee and browsing. And in fact, this is something else. I wrote my book in 2018. Most of my book, in fact, is written at Exclusive Books in Hyde Park, where I would take my laptop, order my coffee, sit at the table, write my book. So for me, Amazon was like, that's never going to work. People aren't going to order books online. They want to touch it. They don't want to read online digital books. They want to be in the bookstore. But I don't have to tell you the story of Amazon. Last year, their physical bookstore sales totaled $17.19 billion, which was down from $17.22 billion the year before. I mean, that's just like, those numbers are extraordinary. And just for the record, Amazon actually now also has physical stores, 487 Whole Foods, 580 of them in Canada, if we include Canada. They have 25 Amazon Go stores, which are cashierless. So you walk in with your basket, no cashier, put it all in your basket, you go to the till, you scan your own stuff, you put it in your bag, pay for it, and you walk out. And I could just keep on quoting numbers, but I'm not going to. The point of my story, a mere 5 years after Webvan listed on the New York Stock Exchange, remember that great story I told you how much money they made? This apparently promising company, which had raised so much money from Silicon Valley, asset managers like myself, ordinary investors like you, went bankrupt. I'm not kidding. Webvan no longer exists. If you had bought shares in Webvan, you would have lost all your money. The irony to all this entire story, of course, is that, and kind of just to rub my nose in it, you know, in 2007, Amazon launched something called Amazon Fresh, which basically is web van because they deliver groceries to your door. And the story just goes on about how many billions they make. So this is simply a graph of the share price of Amazon. So I want to show you how at the beginning in May 1997, $1.73. I actually just copied that graph about 2 hours ago, $3,217.94 US cents per share from 173. Oh, how times change. So this is a guy called Benjamin Graham. He's like a hero in our circles. And after everything you've just heard, I believe one of the most important things to remember about investing is, one, compound interest really does work, and that risk is personal. So each single one of you listening to me, myself included, has their own very personal financial situations and goals. And so it's quite nicely summed up by what we call the father of value investing. I mean, only my industry can be so pedantic. Benjamin Graham. If you thought I was going to say Warren Buffett, you're younger than you think. So what Benjamin Graham said, successful investing is about managing risk, not avoiding it. So my risk, obviously, when I was living in between London and San Francisco, is that I would have invested in Webvan, because to me it felt like the company that was going to do better, because there was no way I was going to order my books online, but there was always going to be like ordering my groceries online and getting them delivered. And so I can't talk for every person here, but what I hope I'm doing is giving you an overview, just kind of a broad picture for now. But bear with me, right? I mean, it's all going to pull together at the end, don't worry. And a question I get asked all the time, do I need a financial advisor? So unless you have a crystal ball, the resounding answer is yes, you absolutely need a financial advisor. The other questions I get asked, do I need to be a millionaire, to employ a financial advisor? The answer is no. These days, you can invest for as little as 100 Rand. Of course, if you're investing small amounts, in fact, even if you're investing big amounts, you also want to know that the fees you are paying for your investment won't eat into your capital or your profits. So what will it cost you? And please take note here, like this is where I want to empower you, because you only pay for advice when you find somebody you like and trust and you give them your money to invest. Like, you don't pay people upfront. And also, it's your right, it's your money. So it's your right to compare fees from the advisors. After all, like, it's your hard-earned money. So, just be careful. The next question is, how do I find a financial advisor? There's an easy answer. There is actually a website, hope you've got a pen handy, called, actually it's not, you don't even need a pen for this. It's called the Financial Planning Institute of South Africa. Use it. And only speak to advisors who are registered. So it's fpi.co.za, Financial Planning Institute.co.za, fpi.co.za. In fact, there's another way to check. The Financial Services Conduct Authority also have a website. We call them FSCA for short, FSCA. Again, very easy, fsca.co.za. All you have to do is check under regulated entities, under phase, which stands for Financial and Advisory Services. And there you go. Every single registered entity has a number. Mine is 45318, or you can just type in the company name, Cartesian. As you can see, it comes up there, and you should be able to find the person you are talking to. So if you're going to use a financial planner, and as you know, I've now said you really must, or an asset manager, the idea is very much go and check that they are registered. If they are not registered, you have no comeback. You can give them your money and they can do whatever they want to with it. We are so highly regulated. I don't even want to talk about the compliance, the regulation, the cost that I have to go through. So please check your financial advisor. So before I go, because I'm almost done, I want to leave you not only with good investment advice, but probably good life advice. And here's a quote from Wayne Gretzky, who is the Canadian who is pretty much considered to be the world's best ice hockey player. You can tell I'm old, right? I keep quoting like people from the 80s and 70s. Always take good advice from sports people. I'm kidding. Just don't roll your eyes like that. So Wayne Gretzky said, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it's been. So unfortunately, even us asset managers do not have crystal balls. So we rely on historic information where the puck has been, and we follow the trends to see how we think the world is changing and where the puck is going. So all those gadgets from the 70s and 80s, the Walkman, the video camera, the VCR that is now in my Apple phone should have made me aware to be buying Apple shares, right? And I've told you the story there. I want to absolutely last, how am I doing for time? Oh, I'm okay for time. But I've got a video that I want to show you, which will give you an idea of how the world changes. It's a video of the top 10 most valuable listed companies in the world. Now watch closely how the types of companies change from 1997 to modern day, and that's only 23 or so years. Unfortunately, the video ends before 2020, but you'll get the idea. So just watch kind of how it all plays out. Why does it keep doing that? There we go. Top left-hand side, the date, and you see how the companies change. The biggest company in the world, Microsoft, that was in 2000. Some of them you'll know, some of them you won't know. And look, General Electric, a background. Vodafone, Royal Dutch. Well, just entering the top 10. So you'll notice here a lot of oil companies, because around this time is when oil hit $100 a barrel for the first time ever. Not any IT company, Amazon, no, Facebook. Yes, from Russian. PetroChina, Chinese oil company, just ridiculous. Petrobras, Brazilian oil company, 2008. Where is Amazon and Facebook? Apple appears in 2010. Watch Apple. We're in 2012 already. And finally, Google makes an appearance. Apple takes over the top spot. Apple runs ahead of everyone else. Finally, Facebook and Amazon make it into the top 10. 2016, 5 years ago only. Top 5 companies by 2017, all tech companies. Tencent, Chinese tech company. Alibaba, online shopping Chinese company. So the world really did change in 2017. So that's all very dramatic. So thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to listen to me. If you're looking for me, I'm at info@Cartesian. We offer, as I said earlier on, every person's situation is very personal to their profile, to their goals, their financial.
Anthea, you frozen.
Financial situation. Oh dear.
Okay, that's
Am I back
yelling
yet?
you again. Yes.
Okay, great. So I was just saying, and I can't say this enough, thank you for giving up your time this evening. Those are the product range we offer, offshore, discretionary, so many more products. And if we don't have, don't have time for always giving financial advice, we also have a range of really good financial advisors who can speak to you one-on-one if you're not sure exactly what it is that you are wanting to do.
Thanks so much, Anthea. I think that's given us a lot of food for thought. I just want to, there are a number of questions in the chat, but I just wanted to pick up on one or two things before we ask those questions. And the one is, I mean, you spoke about compound interest and then about the financial advisor, but how does the compound interest, the shares and the financial advisor come together? What does the financial advisor help you do? And how does investing in shares feature in that versus a traditional bank account? What is the difference?
Okay. Let's start at the beginning. So before you decide where you need to be invested, you need to decide what your financial position is. Who are you? How much money do you need when you retire? And how are you going to get there? The financial advisor will do that, as well as tell you, whether you need medical advice or medical aid advice, insurance advice, right? So that your financial plan is your holistic guide. He will then decide whether you need to be invested in the money market, whether your money needs to sit in the bank because it must be low risk, or whether you can take some risk and make that 14% per annum return from the stock market. Compound interest, I showed you that just to make you all show off to your friends and explain the difference and explain to them that you know the difference and how it works. Because what happens is people invest, and by the way, your pension fund is an investment, so people invest and then they change jobs, and then they withdraw that investment that they've made, and then they go and spend it on something, or they think, you know, they need it for something, instead of leaving it and letting it grow on top of each other. So that's all that compounding is. Just put the money away as much as you can afford to put away, and just keep adding to it and let it grow. Don't withdraw and spend. Basically, that is kind of my summation of investing.
Okay, let's take some of the questions here. How does risk sharing work between an investor and a financial advisor? What happens when things go pear-shaped?
There is no risk sharing. So that's why I said, go and find a proper financial advisor who's good at what they do, who is registered, not some Johnny come lately who doesn't know what he's doing. He should be able to advise you the best way to invest. Now, even though the stock market has returned, I showed you 14% per annum, and I'd like to take you back to that graph, it wasn't a straight line. You know, it did that. It was up some days down. Some years it was up 20%, some years it was down 15%. So, you know, the financial advisor knows all these things. And once he knows what your risk requirements are, he should be able to advise you accordingly. If you have a problem with your financial advisor, and I'm not talking about the stock market now, because the stock market moves up and down. I'm talking about him charging you too much, more than 3.5% of your fees, of your invested money, or if he runs off with your money, or you can't get hold of him, you can go to the phase ombudsman. So like the banks have ombudsman, you can go and complain.
Okay, next question is how the point about having 17 times your annual salary at retirement got me panicking. What is your advice to someone who wants to rectify this and probably has less than 20 years towards retirement?
Start yesterday. There is, so we have a saying in the market, it's not about timing the market, because a lot of people will say to me, oh, but it looks so expensive, it's run so hard. It's not about waiting till the market's cheap. It's time in the market. You can only make money if you are invested. So invest tomorrow, like start investing tomorrow. If you need to start, if you can only afford 100 Rand to start, that's fine. Just start. That is my best advice I can give you. So a financial, if you've got 20 years or less than 20, he will advise how much you need to, he will advise how much you need to be putting away every month. And the answer to that will probably be as much as you can afford.
Okay, do you want to just say something linked to that about kind of the long-term view? Because I think that's also important, right? Is that when we want to invest, for example, in shares, even whether it's our RAs or whatever the case is, you have to take a long-term view. You can't expect, you know, if it falls, then, you know, within a year, then you want to withdraw and so on. So you have to take a long-term view as well.
Absolutely. I have so many graphs for this, but I think we're going to be short of time if I go and find it now. But if on the 23rd of March last year, you looked at your portfolio, let's say it was 1,000 Rand. If on the 23rd of April of last year, you looked at your portfolio, you would have lost 30%. It will be in your 1,000 Rand would be 700 Rand. And that's when people panic. Shireen, you're spot on. That's when people panic and go, oh, I've lost my money. But if you then withdraw your money, you only get 700 Rand. If 6 months later you had waited, you would have made all that money back and a little bit more. So the market in the last year, so in 1 month it fell 30%, but in the last, since then, it's up 38% or something ridiculous. So you have to stomach the volatility if you're going to be making risky investments in the stock market. But and so the personal risk for you is that when you retire, the stock market has fallen. and none of us can predict it. So you've got to be in it for the long term and understand not to panic.
Okay, so here's a question about, could you kindly share your take on investing in local shares and how they perform? I understand SAB has recently released some BEE shares. Would this be something worth investing in? And can I just link that to a question about the future of cryptocurrency? I'm not sure if you have an opinion on that. Somebody's also asked about the future of cryptocurrency.
Oh, honey, I have opinions. Except they don't go together. So let me start with cryptocurrency. Let me explain to you how a share works. A share is basically you own a part of the company. And these listed shares, every year, they have to produce annual audited financial statements. You go to those statements, you look at them, you decide if this is a company that you think will grow. For example, if you're always shopping at Woolworths and you know all your friends are always shopping at Woolworths, it feels like it will always grow, right? But the truth of it is in the financial statement. If you can show me a financial statement for cryptocurrency, I suggest you look into it and invest if you think it's a good investment. So investing is about information and making decisions based on strategy of the company, earnings of the company. Cryptocurrency, it's fun, but you're speculating. You're taking your chances. Good luck with that. That's all I'm going to say. Local shares, when I did my report at the beginning of this year, I calculated, or I thought, taking all these things into consideration, like the GDP, the growth rate, the South African trade balance, like a million things, interest rates, we look at so many things. I thought, I think the South African market is probably, after doing many spreadsheets and much analysis, is probably only going to grow by, 7%. It's already more than 7% and it's only June now. So I think there are some shares on the local market that are really worth investing. But there's another graph I have, which shows an infographic, I should say, which shows that South Africa only makes up 0.7% of global GDP. Now, why would you restrict your investments to only South Africa when there's a whole world you can invest in? Okay, so think about that for a moment. The SAB BEE share scheme, I haven't looked at properly to the finer detail, but I'm always a little bit nervous of these BEE schemes because not many of them have made a profit because they load these schemes with debt. So I can't give you an answer. What I can tell you is that diversification is another absolute must when it comes to investing. So don't take all your money and go and put it in one share. Because if I had done that in 1997 in Webvan in San Francisco, which I was absolutely convinced was going to make so much money, I would have lost all my money. You need diversification. So you put a little bit in Webvan, a little bit in Amazon. Webvan falls, you lose a little bit. Amazon grows, you make a lot. But you don't have a crystal ball, so you don't know what's going to happen. So use the professionals. Like, it is my job to decide which shares to be invested in. Use my funds.
Okay, thank you. We have a few more questions, so I'm asking you to please stay on because I think these are really interesting questions that can really help. And Anthea, please bear with us.
No problem. Go ahead.
What are your thoughts on equity crowdfunding as an investment? I see a lot of these platforms popping up, for example, Livestock Wealth, Kickstarter, and GoFundMe. Although my understanding is that Livestock Wealth is a bit different from Kickstarter and GoFundMe, who are more crowdfunding versus Livestock being just a different investment type of platform. Anthea, do you want to share your, some insights with us on that?
Sure. So all these are, not all. Livestock Wealth is basically an asset class. It's like a property fund. They're taking a whole lot of people's money, little bits of money, and investing it. As if I'm going to take everybody on this group, let's all contribute R1 million and go buy a building Santon because we can't do it on our own, but together we can potentially do it. And that's all they're trying to do, right? Kickstarter is interesting because it's very risky. Like, not only do you have to decide which product you want to invest or receive, because you basically go and buy a product which is new to the market, and that's how they get the capital to make their ideal real, you know. So I'm going to come up with a flying car, but I don't have money to make 100 flying cars that I can go and sell. I go to you and I say, would you like a flying car in 6 months' time? You say, yes, please. And I say, give me the money first, and hopefully my flying car, and you hope that my flying car works, right? So that's Kickstarter. So it's a very different concept. And then as far as I know, GoFundMe is more of isn't it more of a charitable organization, or is it also like Kickstarter? I thought GoFundMe was, you have a project or you need money for something and people donate.
Yeah, it's a fundraising platform,
so it's very different.
But I think it was just worth sharing that, so that I think it's also worth understanding that GoFundMe, for example, you don't get returns, whereas with the others you may get returns.
Exactly. Sorry, well done. Yes, you've nailed it.
Okay, what is your view on how to get the most out of tax-free savings, other than that they are tax-free?
So a lot of people think that tax-free savings account is one option. It's all about risk. So depending on your risk appetite, you can put it into a low risk money market account where you get, I don't know, at the moment, 4.5, not even 4.5, let's call it 4%. Or you could have put it in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where you would have gotten whatever the market is up this year, 14% already. So so you choose your underlying fund. The tax-free savings account is just a wrapper. It's just government saying, for that little portion of your investment, we won't charge you tax, and use it, because you don't often get things for free from the government. So use your, 36,000 Rand a year allowance.
But I think for me also, what as you say about the tax-free, is also that don't think that you only have to do the tax-free through the bank. Where, for example, your interest is going to be very low compared to if you do it through, the shares option, which is like an exchange traded fund or whatever the case may be. Then you can, it's more of an investment then, and then if you also allow it to grow, you can have much better returns.
Spot on.
Yeah. Okay. There's a question. I would love to invest, but the tax implications on investments is so high. How do I reduce my tax?
So I'm not a tax expert, but a lot of the tax-free savings account, provident pension, preservation fund, those are actually tax-efficient vehicles. But I can't, unfortunately, Gina, give you tax advice. Tax advice, again, is very personal. I'm kind of like, I am of the opinion, South Africans, I think, are a little bit gun shy because of the politicians, and I'm sorry if there are any politicians on this webinar, but the truth is that we feel like our tax money is being misused, right? It's being misspent, so we don't want to pay tax. But I think if you're investing and making a profit, then fine, why not pay tax? Can't avoid it.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also think that it depends on the vehicle that you choose, right? So if you go with the retirement annuity or the pension, those types, then you're likely to save, because government wants people to save money. Whereas if you go with like endowment funds and those other things, or not necessarily the endowment fund, but others may have more tax implications. So I think, as you say, it's worth exploring what your options are, but recognizing that, again, it's also a long-term view. So the longer term you invest your money and so on, you could have better, tax implications in a sense. I think that's just what my experience
so that's,
is. Yeah.
Sure. So for a retirement annuity, for example, if you withdraw before age 55, then the tax implications are huge. If you wait until 55, then you have this tax benefit. But if you then withdraw it at 55, even though the tax benefit is there, you still are obliged by rules and regulations to buy a living annuity. So you can't then go and buy a house with your whole 100% of the money that you're getting out. So it's, as I say, it's very, very personal. It's very difficult to give advice to people you don't know what their situation is.
So, Anthea, if somebody is just wanting to start out, because I know one of the things that I read in your book is about, essentially there are other steps you have to take before you even think of investment, right? So how do you become debt-free, for example, dealing with your, with spending too much money on expenses versus savings and so on. What tips would you give for someone who's in a situation now? Obviously, they have debt, some long-term debt or whatever, heavy debt, but they want to invest. What would you say are the first 2 or 3 things they need to start doing in order to, move towards a point of being able to start investing?
So you almost answered that question for me, because you said it right at the beginning. You said, like, how must they control their spending? There's the clue. Control that spending. So one of the things about us as emerging market consumers is that when the market opens up to us and we suddenly get a nice fat paycheck, the first thing we think about doing is buying a nice handbag or pair of shoes. And the first thing you should think about is investing. So let's start with that, right? And then people take out unnecessary debt. So I think there's a difference between necessary and unnecessary debt. When I start with a client who has a lot of debt, the first thing I ask them to tell me is what interest rate they are paying on their store cards, their Edgar's card or their Woolworths card or whatever. What interest rate are they paying on their credit card, and what interest rate are they getting from the bank? And they don't know. They don't know. They have no idea. So do yourself a favor. Go and find out. It's going to be like that 17 times. What do you mean? Like, go and check what the bank is charging you. If you've got a credit card, start there. If you've got a store card, like an Edgar's card or one of those, find out what interest rate they are charging you. And I think that will, I honestly think that will shock people so much that they will close those store cards, those clothing accounts immediately, pay cash. You don't, listen, if you don't have the cash to pay for it, you don't need it. You just rather save the money than pay 2 or 3 or 4 times the actual price of it. So really, it's a discipline thing. And I know it's a little bit boring. Right? We all need luxuries. We all need treats. We all need a nice outfit. But more importantly, that's why I showed you the simple versus compound interest. You choose. Decide whether you want to withdraw the money you make and spend it and it's gone, or whether you want to save it and it increases exponentially almost.
Thanks. And then my last question is, one of the reasons why I've asked you to have this conversation is because I know a lot of women my age, around 50 or so, are kind of in a position where you're not really financially secure and retirement is just around the corner. So what is it, we can do at this age? Okay, I've started doing something better than I was 2 years ago, for example. But, what is it that we can do now in the position where we are, at the age where we are, to kind of just start building some level of better financial foundation for us? Because, all I think about is like, you couldn't have worked for so many years, given so much, done so much, and you sit and then you wait for SASSA when you're 60, what can we do now at the age where we are, where we can still earn income and so on to help ourselves?
I'm afraid the answer is not an easy one. There is no magic. You cannot magic money out of nowhere, right? So you have to save as much as you possibly, and invest, not just save, because saving is like just putting it in the bank and earning 2%. But you have to invest as much as you possibly can to ensure that when you do retire, you're a bit more comfortable. Like, make sure you've got no debt, make sure you've got that house to live in, the car that you need for your retirement, and save. Like, there just is no easy answer. It's a boring answer. Now, the other thing that happens, and be careful of this, when it happened to me in March, actually, because I turned 50 and I worked at Morgan Stanley in London, and so I had a pension fund. Which a week before my 50th birthday, they sent me a little letter going, "Oh, you're old now. You need to go into a lower risk product," which I thought was very rude of them. But what happens with pension funds in South Africa is that generally you have a risk by age. To retirement age, your pension fund or your financial advisor generally advises you to take less risk, which means lower returns. If you're in a situation, and again, I'm not giving, please don't take this as a, if you feel, and come and talk to me if you're not sure, but if you feel that you don't have enough money, you're getting close to retirement, by the way, you've got a few more years, a decade and a half. So kind of use that. Don't go into low risk products. The risk story and why they do it is that on your 65th work anniversary, they give you the watch and say, "Shireen, thanks for playing. You now are out of a job." And you have to take out your retirement and buy a living annuity or pension fund, a pension annuity. The risk is that the market will have dropped 30% like it did last year, March, during COVID, right? During lockdown, when lockdown came. Now, if you had waited another 6 months, you'd have been fine. Same thing happened in 2008. I feel like we need another session so that I can show you all my fabulous graphs to explain this to you. But so the risk when you are invested in the stock market versus money in the bank or a low risk money market is that even over time, you will make more money in the stock market, but the risk is that when you need the money when you retire, that the market has dropped. And that's the personal risk. So that's why they put you into lower risk investments. And generally, if you haven't reached the level you need to reach, you actually need to keep taking risks.
Thanks so much.
Sounds crazy, but yeah, there's no other way.
It really clarifies it for me, because I had a conversation with someone and they were saying this thing about, okay, as you get older, you have to lower your risk and so on. And I'm really glad that you raised that. Are there any final questions for Anthea before we close? You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. I just want to check that I covered all the questions in the chat. Yeah, I have. Okay, I don't think there are any other questions, but I do think we need another conversation at some point. I think this is just, educated us a little bit, but I think we need to know a lot more about, about this, about investing, but also about, I think, understanding your risk appetite, but also understanding, where you are financially and how you will need to adapt your financial situation in order to invest. So Anthea, thank you so much for making the time for us and staying a little bit over. I hope everyone has found it really useful. I think do see this as the start of a conversation I'll definitely try and have a few more follow-up conversations and maybe a little bit more focused on different areas of investments, or looking in detail at things like retirement annuities, tax-free savings, and so on. And maybe that would also help. Then we can dig deeper into each of those and the options and implications and all of that kind of stuff. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate your presence and your time, and for the great questions as well. I look forward to seeing you in the next round, and I'll definitely keep all of you informed about when we plan to have the next session. And again, Anthea, thanks so much. If you, as Anthea said, she has the book, and as I said, I read the book and I found it extremely useful. So between Anthea and I, if you do want to buy the book, you can contact either of us to get the book as well.
Before I go, can I just say that was a fantastically engaged audience. I quite enjoyed that. Thank you very much. Shireen, thank you for organizing it. Audience, I can see you all saying thank you, Linda, Lusungu, Ivy, Kansha. It was a pleasure, and have a good rest of your evening. And good luck out there.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night. Thanks, Shireen and Anthea.